Welcome back for another episode of Errant Adventures, the solo actual play podcast where stories are told at the speed of dice. With me, Steve Morrison, your game master and solo player. Now come on, let's grab the dice and see where our story goes. Welcome back for Chapter 26 of Book 1, Meridian. Last time, Sejana makes contact with the Gita Protectorate ship Alabaster and speaks with Captain Harton Royal, who demands to know who they are and what their purpose is in the system. Sejana has no record of the Gita Protectorate, so she continues on the assumption that Royal and his people may be connected to the pirates who attacked them upon their arrival. After a brief discussion, Captain Royal informs her that the two ships that attacked them belong to the Skaza Mining Consortium, who once owned this system, but have been ousted from power by the Gita Protectorate. The Skaza continue to mine the asteroids and make attempts on the planet, but Royal and his crew work to fend them off and keep the planet's meager resources for his people. Royal agrees to help the Wolf, but he insists on boarding the ship and verifying their story for himself. He does so with an armed escort and meets the rest of the crew. Einar takes him to the bridge where he verifies the ship's logs. Einar asks if they're going to help the crew get the ship back in working order, and Captain Royal agrees, on the condition that Sejana, who he knows to be a decorated member of the Imperial Special Service, helps with a mission against the Skaza. Einar stares at Royal for a moment, then shakes his head. I don't know anything about this mission, but I'm assuming if you need her help, it's incredibly dangerous. Luchelle's a member of my crew, and I will not put her life at risk. Regret fills the captain's face. I see. Then I'm afraid my superiors will insist upon impounding your ship. You and your crew will find a place within our workforce. Grinding his teeth, Einar growls at the man. The soldier in the doorway raises a laze pistol, but Captain Royal raises his hand. I'm sorry, but there's little I can do. We need help, either to break the Skaz presence in this system or to bolster our numbers. He stands. At least let me talk to her. Explain the mission. She may well volunteer. I know she'll volunteer, because it's what will get the rest of us home safely, Einar says. But it's not right to trade her life for ours. I don't wish to trade anyone's life, Royal says, somewhat wistfully. I've seen enough of that to fill multiple lifetimes. But I have a duty to my people. My soldiers are skilled and trained, but a Decure of the ISS has more training and more experience than all my soldiers put together. He takes a step forward. I need her help. And I don't wish to be rude, but you're in no position to stop me from asking her. I would rather do this with her captain's blessing, but I will do what I must. Einar's shoulders slump, and he leans back against the console, running a hand across his face. I can't stop you, but I won't give my blessing to you, using one of my people to lead what is sounding more and more like a desperate mission. Captain Royal shrugs and says, In war, all missions are desperate. Then he turns and leaves the bridge. Sejana can tell something is wrong the moment Einar steps through the hatch. He has his captain's guilt face on, and when his eyes meet hers, he subtly shakes his head. Captain Royal looks at her and says, Luchelle, please come with me. As Einar passes her to rejoin the others, he mutters, Don't do it. Keeping her face impassive, she joins Royal and follows him and the soldier through the hatch, down the passageway, and into the common space. He gestures for a table and sits. She joins him. Looking at the soldier, Royal says, Cyril, you're dismissed. The soldier salutes, turns, and leaves the two of them alone. Sejana meets the captain's eyes and says, What do you want? The captain's eyes widen and flick to her gauntleted hand. No, I'm not reading your mind, she says, if that's what you're wondering. But from Einar's sour expression, you told him something he didn't like. You want something, so spit it out. Royal's face shifts from surprise to amusement. I never had the opportunity to meet one of your types, but I certainly heard about the lack of respect for authority. Technomancers have great respect for authority, when it is earned. Royal raises both hands in a placating gesture. I think we got off on the wrong foot here. Please, let me start again. I'm Harton Royal, formerly Pentarchan of the Imperial Scout Frigate Rubicon, now captain of the Gita Protectorate ship Alabaster, and I need your help with a very important mission. Did you give yourself that promotion? Sejana asks, pushing him again. How easy would it be to make him angry? He closes his eyes for a moment, takes a breath, and says, I was born on Gita. Grew up here working in the labor camps. They weren't called that then, of course. The consortium called them workforce optimization sites. I tested well and was sent to the Imperial Academy. After the downfall, we didn't know what to do. Our fleet was decimated by the Regule. Command structures broke down. Nevarkant Olean started talking about building a new empire, and my crew were not interested in following a madman's crusade. We came to Gita as a place to escape. I hadn't been home in years, and the Skaza had made things so much worse. Reduced rations, longer work hours, enforcing wage reductions to pay for housing. The people were suffering, and there were those among them who were looking for an opportunity to make a change. We provided them that opportunity. The Skaza had lightly armed ships, but nothing compared to an Imperial scout frigate. At least, not at the time. The crew took a vote, and we joined them. Drove the Skaza away from the planet, from the orbital station. We couldn't remove them entirely, but we hurt them enough that they're barely clinging on to what profits they have. We've been trading blows back and forth for the last 6 years, with nothing decisive. He looks at her. I have a plan, but I need someone to lead the mission. Someone with training in high-risk orbital insertions. Someone like Meridian, the Technomancer de Cure of Falcon Squad. Someone who received the Imperial Sword for bravery under fire. Sejana is silent under his steady gaze. She doesn't break the eye contact because she can see the fear and hope mixed in his expression. They sit in silence for a long few minutes. Then Sejana says, So that's why Aina was unhappy. You want me to lead a suicide mission? Royal sighs and closes his eyes again, pinching the bridge of his nose. It isn't a suicide mission. The plan is a good one, and I'm certain you can make it better. Help me with this, and I will make sure your ship is repaired, and you and your crew are on the way home as soon as possible. Please. A slight tremor enters his voice, and Sejana, who's accustomed to people lying to her, doesn't detect any falsehood from him, any theatrics. Whatever he may be, Captain Royal wants to protect his people, and that is something Sejana can respect. You asked Aina first for his sign-off, and he refused you, Sejana says, not waiting for confirmation. Aina has a good heart. He doesn't want to put his people into harm's way, but you and I are programmed differently. We jump into the fire. He opens his eyes and meets hers. You'll help us? If you give me your word that you'll help my crew regardless of the outcome, then yes, I'll help you. Captain Royal nods and extends a hand. You have my word. I'll have engineers waiting when we reach the station, ready to make whatever repairs are necessary. Thank you. He releases her hand and says, Your captain knows you well. He said you would say yes if I asked, that you would take care of your crew. Sejana ignores that last statement and says, What's the mission? I have no idea what the mission is. So let's roll some dice using the Starforged reference guide and see what we can figure out. I'm going to start with a little action and theme. 96 and 17. That's transform, cure. Not what I was expecting, but let's see what we can make of this. Let's focus on the cure part first. I don't think this is a literal cure, like for a disease, but probably a way to resolve the stalemate that has plagued this system. Oh, yep, that just triggered an idea. I think the Skaza Mining Consortium have been developing a weapon that will neutralize the orbital station. Their plan is to sneak it aboard using a raid as cover. Probably something like a nerve gas or some other airborne agent that would subdue the population. I don't think they want to kill them because who would work the mines then? This is purely about reestablishing control over the system. All right, I think I've got enough of an idea for this mission, so let's go back to the story. Captain Royal activates his Q and projects a display over the table. We've received some intelligence about what the Skaz are planning, and it involves using this to pacify our population. He points at a series of chemical formulae. Sejana squints at it and says, Travixian numbing agent, or something like it. Royal nods. They've made some alterations to it. It'll do more than just dull the senses. It will knock anyone exposed to it unconscious. So they gas your station and hold your people hostage until you and the other fighters surrender. Sejana shakes her head. And once we're out of the way, they'll call it reclaiming their rightfully contracted workers and put everyone back to the mines again. Royal grimaces. I'm sure examples will be made to ensure future attempts at liberation are squashed. What's your plan? Royal swipes away the chemical formulae and displays schematics for a deep space refinery. The platform is an amalgam of geometric shapes, a large rectangular station atop a downward-facing cone. Gesturing at it, he says, This is their base of operations. In the old days, they would ferry workers from the station to the various mines around the planet and system. All the ore went to the refinery, and then was loaded onto ships and sent out to their customers. He rotates the images and points to where the cone meets the rectangular top. Now they keep workers on the refinery platform. People who either didn't join us when we threw off our shackles, or people they've pressed into service since then. You and your crew would likely be among them if we hadn't caught up to you first. These 3 levels closest to the intake ports are all refineries. Waste product gets funneled downward and ejected out into space. The refined material is grav-lifted up to the bottom level of the main station, where most of the dock ports are located. Then up from there are levels for housing, hydroponics, and you get to the top 2 levels for the executive suites and R&D. He points at the level second from the top. That's our target, the R&D lab where we believe they've got the gas in storage, waiting for an opportunity to use it. Sejana studies the schematics, reaching out and expanding the view. Is this current or old data? Royal grimaces again. It's based on information we found in the orbital station's database, so it's several years old, but it's unlikely they've made any changes. Sejana glances at him. How willing are you to make a jump with several-year-old star charts? He purses his lips and nods. I understand the hesitation, and I recognize the danger, but we know they have this gas, and they're planning to use it. And how do you know that? She asks. You have someone on the inside? You know as well as anyone that we don't discuss intelligence gathering for operational security, Royal replies. Shall we move on to the plan? Sejana nods, and he calls up a system view of the refinery in relation to the asteroid field. Right. Let's start with the approach. It takes a couple hours before Sejana is satisfied with the plan. Captain Royal's original plan remains more or less intact, with a few modifications from her expert suggestions. Once they're finished, Royal stands and extends a hand to her, which she takes. I appreciate you helping us out, he says, giving her hand a firm shake before releasing it. I knew that someone of your caliber would be able to help us. Her face remains impassive. The mission isn't a success yet, Captain, and no offense to your people. Even Falcon Squad would have only attempted something like this if it was desperate. Royal's expression grows tense. We are desperate to cure Lushale, but that doesn't mean we can't provide some hospitality to your crew while you're here. He checks his cue. Your ship has already been docked with our orbital station, and repairs will begin as soon as possible. Sejana nods. I appreciate the offer of hospitality, but I will remain aboard the Wolf until the mission commences. Preparations, Royal says sagely, and she doesn't deny it. He might be thinking she will be performing some dark technomantic ritual to ensure their success, but really she learned long ago to sleep when there's time, especially before a challenging mission. The captain says his farewells and leaves the common room. Sejana waits a moment or two before turning and walking out the hatch, through the passage and down to her quarters. She heard Royal give the order to let the crew return to their stations after Sejana agreed to assist the Gita Protectorate in its mission, so she didn't feel it necessary to check in with the others. No, sleep first. She enters her quarters and strips out of her coat, hanging it on the hook by the door. She walks into the lav, turns on the water, and splashes it across her face 3 times. When she's done, she looks up and stares back at the weary blue-gray eyes in the mirror. Her expression solidifies and she exhales a long, steady breath before returning to her cabin. She's about to strip down when a sharp rap comes at the door. Crossing the small room, she waves the door open and finds Einar standing on the other side, arms folded. She looks down and quirks an eyebrow. Good evening, Captain. He glowers at her. Don't give me that attitude, Lushale. You took the mission. You told him I would. He grunts. I hate being right. You could have made a different choice. Not really, she replies. He chuckles, though there's an edge of rage to it. Don't like the cut of their work clothes? She returns his chuckle with an equally humorless smile. I'd rather die with my boots on than be worked to death by a bunch of idealists. Don't mistake Royal's politeness. He will burn our lives and his if it gives his people even a glimmer of chance at freedom. The Gita Protectorate may not be the religious fanatics the Plith are, but they are no less fanatical. At least this way you have a chance to get out of here. You already don't think you're coming back. I always believe I'm going to come back. It's what makes us run into the fire. This gives us the best chance to get back home. So I'm going to do what it takes, and you're going to make sure the ship is ready to fly when I get back. He studies her for a long moment, then nods. I know better than to try talking you out of it anymore. But promise me you'll be careful. I mean, as careful as you're capable of being while running towards gunfire. Don't worry, Aina, she says. I have been doing this a long time. I fought Regul and survived. Well, then I better let you rest. I'll make sure the others don't bother you. Aina, she says, and he pauses. Don't forget to watch Ludin. There's something there, and I don't know what it is yet. I'll figure it out once I'm back. He nods again, and then leaves her to her rest. They're waiting for her in the cargo hold when she arrives. Ayati gives her a nervous smile, while Einar can barely look at her. In a corner, Ludin watches with wide eyes. None of them have seen her like this before. Sejana stands in the hatch, dressed in her battle gear. Deuteronium plates are magnetically sealed to her deep skin, forming a hardened outer shell, the symbol of a Tarkesian gyrfalcon emblazoned on the left shoulder. Her laser pistol is magnetized to her side, right where she's used to it being. The hilt of an electroblade sits on her right thigh, easily within reach. A kinetic rifle is attached via grav tether to her chest plate. She hasn't worn her ISS gear in a couple of years, but she kept up the ritual of maintaining it, never sure when wearing it again would be necessary. Captain Royal stands apart from them, by the hatch where his shuttle arrived to transport her to the Alabaster. His eyes are bright as he studies her appearance, and he begins nodding as though convinced for the first time that they can do this. She wishes she had his faith. Stopping in front of Einar and Ayati, Sejana looks at the two of them and says, I'll be back before you miss me. Ayati grins, but Sejana can see the tension in her jaw. She says, Oh, are you going somewhere? Einar chuckles and extends a hand. Whatever gods you believe in, or powers you cling to, may they protect you. Sejana shakes his hand, then touches Ayadi's shoulder and offers her a sliver of a smile. Then she turns and approaches Captain Royal. He nods to her, and they enter the shuttle. Sejana does not look back. Once they're strapped into the shuttle seats, Royal says, "Thank you again for doing this, Decure. With you leading the assault, we cannot fail." "Don't let the armor fool you," she says. "There's no more ISS, and I'm not doing this because it's my patriotic duty." He looks surprised by the cold slice of her words. "You're doing this for your friends. An equally noble pursuit." "Noble pursuits don't guarantee success. You may think I'm some sort of miracle worker, but I'm not. I'm just a soldier like anyone else, and I'm tired of fighting senseless wars." On that, we agree. There's nothing more I'd like to do than pass command to someone else and write quick vids for the rest of my life. Royal frowns. But sometimes the hard tasks are left to tired soldiers. None of us are the same. Not after the downfall. I don't expect you to be a god. I just need someone who can lead the assault team to success. I have to know, if we're going to survive this, if we're going to succeed, will your team do what is necessary to win? He nods and says, "They know what's at stake. Then let's get to work." Thanks for listening to Errant Adventures. If you enjoyed the show, please spread the word. And if you want to support the show directly, leave me a review or support me on Patreon at patreon.com/errantadventures. You can also buy me a coffee at ko-fi.com/errantadventures. If you want to interact with me, my handle on all the socials is @errantsolopod, or you can email me at errantsolopod@gmail.com. I also post short fiction and campaign-related materials on my website, errantadventurespod.com. Thanks again for listening, and I'll see you in the deep, liars.